Hi everyone, it's Chris Tuck here, survivorsofabuse.org.uk. Now I wanted to come on here today and talk about the drama Unforgiveable on BBC Two. So it's about the Mitchell family dealing with the devastating aftermath of an act of sexual abuse committed by a member of their own family who after 2 years is about to leave prison. Now, there are many complexities to this drama that I wanted to talk about. The myths, the realities, the language, and also the nuances around any kind of sexual abuse case. And every case is individual and it has its own complexities and nuances. However, I want to look at some of the main points around this drama in particular. So, first of all, I was really pleased to see that it'd been put on, and it shows, as I said, some of the depth and the breadth. And I want to use my own lived experience and my own learning from a professional standpoint as well. So, Joe, the abuser, is the uncle, and he obviously got convicted of a sexual offence, a sexual act against a child, which was his nephew called Tom. And it shows their dynamic, but then it shows another level as well. So I do encourage you to go and watch it actually. So one of the main points out of this drama was that if you have been abused, you will become an abuser. And we know this to be an absolute myth, okay? So Joe thought that because he had been abused as a child, that has what made him become an abuser. And that might be his reality, but it's not our reality. So he was challenged quite a few times on that thought during the programme. And it is true that if you have been convicted of a sexual offence, or you are a perpetrator that hasn't been convicted, you might have abuse in your background. But the myth that all of us who have been sexually abused will go on to sexually abuse is just not right. It's incorrect. It's not factual. Okay, so that's point one that I want to drill across. Now, I also want to have an understanding really around some sexual offenders, like Joe that was portrayed in this drama. He truly thought that his act of sexual abuse against his nephew was because he was abused as a child. And as I said, I'm not a psychologist and I'm not here to defend that narrative, but it might be his reality. But we cannot allow any sexual offender, alleged or otherwise, to think that their actions are okay, because they're not. They're just not. Now, if you are someone that has feelings towards children and you don't want to act upon them, or you are acting upon them, there is help and support out there for you. All I can say from being a victim of sexual abuse is that our lives are devastated by your actions if you are someone who acts on your feelings. Now, from where I sit, all perpetrators, if they've acted on their compulsion or not, have a choice. You have a choice as an adult whether or not you act upon your thoughts and your feelings. So as I said, Stop It Now, Lucy Faithful Foundation is where you can go and get help and support if you have got those thoughts, feelings and compulsions. Because I am here to stand up for the rights of the victims and to change the way that these narratives are spun out here. But I equally want to be mindful of the two sides of the narrative, and if I can shine a light on it from an unbiased perspective, which I don't think I can because I'm a victim and I really stick up for victims' rights, but if we want to be proactive about prevention, we do need to understand what is driving adult men and women to do these acts, these violations against children and young people. So however much we don't want to think about that, and you've got a right not to think about that, we do need to explore what is going on so we can be proactive about prevention and stop the cases happening in the first place. Because if you are a victim or survivor of sexual abuse, you know how devastating it is on all areas of your life. So if we can prevent cases from happening in the first place, then that has to be a good thing. So that is the first point. If you have been abused, you will go on to be an abuser. No, I challenge that narrative 100%. Now, another point from the drama that I picked up on, you are only in it for the compensation. You will only report it for the compensation. And even the Joe, the abuser, said this to another victim. You can get money from this. They are correct, but also the way that it was portrayed is incorrect. You have to report your sexual abuse to the police and you need to get a crime number. You can then go to criminal injuries compensation to see if you can get that compensation. Now, this can be used against you in a court of law by the defence team. However, it should not be used in a court of law. Now, in this drama, it was used as part of the defence team's argument. You're only in it for the money. And when we took our family case to the criminal justice system, we found out on the last day of our time period of being able to access criminal injuries seeker. So when you report to the police, you get a crime number, and then you've got a 2-year window from reporting, getting that crime number, to being able to access criminal injuries compensation. Now, there are special circumstances if you are outside of that window, right? We took 5 years to get our case acknowledged in the court system because we had been told no further action all along the way. But my work that I was involved in when I was at the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse for over 7 years, I was part of the VSCP. Part of the victim's right to review gives you the right to apply for criminal injuries compensation. And it also says that no one should be using that against you as part of their defence. So the barristers in the court should not be allowed to use that against you if you have applied for criminal injuries compensation. We applied for Seeker because we'd lived for decades with the impact of the abuse that we'd gone through. We needed therapy, specialist trauma-informed therapy. That costs money. So usually the Seeker, the compensation that you get, is not life-changing. It's literally an amount of money that you will get that acknowledges the harm that you've gone through. And the maximum amount that you can usually get through Seeker is like £22,000. But if you, and that's probably for the worst kind of sexual abuse, like a rape, for example. If you was just touched over clothing, you would maybe get £1,000 or £2,000. So it's not life-changing money. And if you are a victim and survivor of this, you will know that what you've gone through, no amount of money can compensate you for the trauma impact and the life-changing impact that you have because of the sexual assaults or rapes that you've endured as a child and or young person. So I really want to challenge "you're only in it for the money" narrative by sharing what I've shared with you. And it's not easy. You can't just say, oh, I was a victim. You have to prove it on the balance of probabilities. There has to be evidence. You have to prove it. And if you want to get a higher award because your life has been so devastated by what you've gone through, you usually have to go through a psychiatric assessment, which you have to pay for. And then as a result of that psychiatric assessment, then you may be given a higher award. But all of this, you have to do off your own bat. No one is there to help you through it unless you choose to go through a solicitor that can help you through Seeker, through the process. But even if you have someone like that helping you, you have to do a lot of the work to prove your case. And that solicitor that's helping you will then take 25% of any award that you get. So the whole process, the criminal injuries, the criminal system, justice system, is really re-triggering and re-traumatizing. And the attrition rates are really high because many victims and survivors cannot deal with the ongoing impact of what they're going through in order to prove, one, that they are a victim, and two, that they've got the impact. It's exhausting, and many of us will drop out. Many of us will drop out. So that is point number 2 that I wanted to raise. Now, you will find, if you watch this drama, that Joe the uncle committed this act of sexual violation against his nephew. And the nephew shows you how he's impacted. He shows you that he's exploding at school. He's taking out what's happened to him out on other people because he doesn't know how to deal with it. His mum, his school do not know how to deal with it. And you see that the specialist support, the interventions that this young victim needs, he's not getting. He's not high enough on the threshold to get help until he tries to end his own life. And even then, they challenge the fact that he didn't really want to do that. He he wasn't intending to do that. He wasn't serious about really ending his own life. And the narrative around this is every young victim of sexual abuse and violence should automatically get that trauma-informed health and recovery. Because if you believe Joe in his narrative that I was abused when I was young, so therefore I've become an abuser, if we give that intervention when the sexual abuse, exploitation happens, then we can challenge all of the thoughts and the feelings and the thinking around what that victim has gone through. And we can explain to them at the time of their events of their abuse that, one, it was not their fault. Two, what they're feeling and thinking is absolutely normal for the abnormal abuse that they've gone through. And that it's okay to be angry, to be sad. It's okay to have had a physiological response to what they'd gone through. So many children and young people that have gone through sexual abuse and exploitation would feel horrified and disgusted by what they've gone through. But equally, there are some that found enjoyment from what they've gone through. Not because they enjoyed it per se, but because there's a physiological reaction, a biological reaction that happens, and they've got no control over that. Equally, there are some young people who go through abuse that if they were abused by a male and they're male, or if they were abused by a female and they're female, that they may be now thinking about their own sexuality. Am I gay, for example? That does come up for some victim and survivors. They query their sexuality, and they may think that because they enjoyed the abuse that's happened to them, that they may be gay. And when they find out as an adult that they're not, then it's really confusing for them. So we have to start having these kind of conversations so that we can help people recover in the best way that they need at the time of the abuse and afterwards. So it's really important that we start looking at these deeper conversations. So having conflicting thoughts as a young man when experiencing good feelings from abuse and knowing no different. And this may explain why a small minority of people do go on to abuse if all they've experienced is abuse. That is their norm. Now, I'm not condoning it and I'm not saying it's right, but it may explain why some people go on to abuse if they have experienced abuse a lot in their childhood. So I want to say again, I don't condone it at all, but it may explain why some perpetrators, especially younger ones, don't understand that what they're doing is wrong or against the law. So, conflicting thoughts around your sexuality is quite common. Finding out that you may not want to have children because of what you've gone through, and then the narrative around that you may go on to abuse will stop some individuals having children later on in life because they don't want to become the person who abused them. So we need to have conversations around all of these different narratives. Now, when Joe, the uncle, realises that he was abused as a young person, and he reports his perpetrator to the police, and then he goes through a court case, and his perpetrator, who is an upstanding member of the community, and everyone around that adult sees that adult as being respectable, and then you've got Joe, who is now a convicted perpetrator, and he's calling out his perpetrator in a court. When this man stands up in court and says, who are you going to believe? You're going to believe me, or you're going to believe him? And we see this time and time again in a court, where the defence will use the credibility of the accused, the alleged perpetrator, over the victim, who may be then spoken about as not a credible witness. So the victim may have had a life of addiction, may have had a life of assault, may had a life of just not being what society deems them to be, a credible person, an upstanding person. Yeah, that is all used, that language is used in a court of law to get many alleged perpetrators off the hook. Or if that person, the alleged perpetrator, the accused, is convicted, it's then used in the roundup of the sentencing. Oh, you know, he's got good character, he didn't know the law, he or she didn't understand what they were doing is wrong, he or she was abused in their childhood, so we need to make this sentencing more lenient. We need to challenge all of this, yeah? It seems that the criminal justice system, right, really protects the accused and really forgets about the victim most of the time. Now, Operation Soteria was all about bringing the focus and the narrative back onto the victim, what they've gone through, how they should be treated, and the justice and the specialist support that they need in order for them to turn their lives around after the abuse that they've suffered and they have endured. And that is a really positive thing, but we still hear every day about the journey of the victim and how their needs are not being met. Now, Claire Waxman, the Victims Commissioner for London, she has done a lot of work around the journey report, so from reporting to court. Now, we know the stats around this. Maybe only 3% of all cases of rape, whether it's non-recent or current, get to the court system, and only 1% or thereabouts gets a conviction. So already you know you're up against it before you even come to report what has happened to you, whether it's non-recent or whether it's current. And that all has to change, but it really comes down to us challenging narratives, highlighting the myths, highlighting the realities, understanding the journey and what can we change. So the next point I wanted to make, and I've already addressed it a little bit, was the victim, Tom, the young man, not being able to deal with the impact, and he was self-harming, he was acting out, he was exploding. But many victims and survivors, we implode. We think it's our fault, we hold the shame, we hold the guilt, we demonise ourselves, our self-esteem is often on the floor, we just don't feel worthy enough. We feel that society, friends, family would judge us if we spoke out about it. And that has got to change. So that's why I'm on here having these conversations. And I've had these conversations on social media every single day. There are many talks by me on all of my different platforms, but I thought I'd come on TikTok today to have this conversation. So not being unwell enough to get the help and support you need, it's not right. Where is our duty of care to victims of sexual abuse, sexual violence? Where is our duty of care? There should be no threshold. There should be no postcode lottery. We should be able to access help and support after any disclosure. So when I was 9, I was sexually abused by someone outside the family home. It was reported to the police, and I did have an internal examination at the police station back in 1979. This wouldn't happen now. But that caused me a trauma. And then it was all closed down. Nothing happened. I didn't get any therapy. No one spoke about it. It was just all silenced. It was all pushed under the rug. And I can honestly tell you that the way of handling that, and it seems that Tom didn't get the right help and support that he needed either in this drama, and I know that that goes across the board even today. If you don't get the right help and support and the right interventions, if it doesn't get spoken about, then the young person will internalise, remember, and it will come back up for them later on in life, and it will impact mental health, physical health and emotional health in some way. This drama also shows the complexities and the dynamics in the family and how each person deals with it or doesn't deal with it. And it's really important that even if you don't think it's happened because that's not your experience, that you don't close down someone who has experienced, who is saying that they've experienced something, that you listen to them, you don't judge them, and then you also maybe refer them on to the different charities out there and the statutory services out there that are available. Because you may be the first point of contact for the person in front of you that's sharing what they're sharing. And if you dismiss it, if you don't listen, if you then don't help in any way you can, and even if you don't know how to handle it, the best way for you is just to go, right, how can I help you? What is it you need? And if they don't know what it is they need, then you could say to them, I'm here anytime for you to come back and speak to me, and we can do this together, whatever that may be. Only 1 in 8 children who have suffered or are suffering, experiencing sexual abuse, violence today are known to the authorities. So there is a silent endemic, epidemic going on in the UK and across the world. The Child Sexual Abuse Centre of Expertise share 500,000 new cases of sexual abuse happens every single year here in the UK. So if you think about a classroom of 30 children, at least 3 children in that class are experiencing some form of abuse, mental, physical, sexual. Usually sexual abuse will involve all 3 types of abuse. Usually. Because to keep a secret, there's usually grooming and some kind of other abuse, some kind of threat. This is our secret. If you don't keep the secret, this person will be harmed. If you don't keep the secret, if this is out in the open, you're going to be taken into care. Can you see? There's going to be some kind of hold over that child or young person. And often the victim doesn't want to see the family broken up. Sometimes, or most of the time, that child doesn't know what is happening to them is not normal. It becomes their normal. Even if they like it, don't like it, whatever their experience of it is, they don't know that it's not normal because it's normal for them whilst it's happening. And in this drama, and I hear this all the time, if you didn't like it, if you didn't want it, why did you go back? Why did you not speak up? Why did you? That shit has all got to stop. These are children and young people. We as adults need to protect them. We as adults should not be sexually abusing them, exploiting them, using children and young people for our own pleasure. That needs to stop. All of that judgment, all of that questioning, needs to stop. And I'm calling it out here and right now. Children and young people are not responsible for keeping themselves safe. They are not responsible for the response that their bodies might give or not give. They're not responsible for trying to sort out how they feel and how they act because of what has happened to them. It's up to us adults to, 1, not to abuse in the first place, 2, to listen, 2, to see the signs, and 3, to help those children, 3, 4, 5, to help those children and young people through what they've gone through. It's not down to the children and the young people. It's up to the adults. Now, another point that I wanted to talk about and share. When the uncle, Joe, was in prison, and you see this all the time, there is outrage against any prisoner who has violated, sexually abused, raped a child. You can see all of the other prisoners, outrage, uproar. You're a nonce, you're a this, you're a that. Okay. Equally, outside, there is always this kind of outrage. But nobody seems to get behind the true fundamental changes that we need. So how many of you out there even know that we had an inquiry into intrafamilial abuse in 2015? How many of you know the recommendations from that inquiry? How many of you knew that there was an inquiry into institutional sexual abuse between 2015 and 2022? Do you know the outcomes of that, the recommendations of that inquiry? How many of you know about these serious case reviews that we've had into the physical abuse, the mental abuse, the torture, the murders of different children from all different ethnicities? When we hear about it on the media, there's outrage, but there's no fundamental kind of action, societal action. There's no demand from the government that any of the inquiry or serious case reviews recommendations are called for, what have you done with that? There's no follow-up. So it's people like me who have got our fingers on the pulse, who call this out day in, day out. But you know what, gang? We need you guys now to also step up. We need that outrage from you towards the government to make sure that they implement inquiry recommendations, serious case review recommendations, and not only call for that, but make sure it's actioned. So we've had successive governments over decades, right, that have said they're going to do A, B, C. Yet I can tell you that it hasn't happened, or a watered down version of it has happened. We spent millions, 186 million on the ICSA inquiry that happened over 7.5 years. And I've spent the last 3 years on a daily basis holding the government to account by actually asking them across social media, this is what was said that needed to happen, this is what has happened, and what are you now going to do about all of it? Okay? We need more of you to have that outrage manifesting in action, okay? And if you're not sure where to start, comment below saying I want to get involved. I'll send you an update of where we're at, okay? Because it's really important that it's just not my voice or other people like me, and there are many of us, but when we're shouting in the wind from an independent voice, it all gets lost. It needs many, thousands, millions of us to be on the same page and call for the same action. So if you are new to me, new to my page, new to my advocacy and my activism, welcome. I am Chris Tuck, and I'm a survivor of all forms of abuse, and I help people recover from that abuse through our holistic health 8-week recovery program. I've written a few books, my autobiography. I've written a self-help book for victims and survivors because I want to help as many people as possible. But a large part of my work is raising awareness, having difficult conversations, being proactive in prevention, and also demanding that the victim and survivor's journey through the criminal justice system, through the healing journey, is simplified, easier, and more accessible. Hence, whilst I'm speaking to you today about this drama that I've watched on BBC Two called Unforgiveable. So I'd love you to go and watch it. It'd be an hour out of your life, and I would love you then to come and comment on my video, and let's see what conversations we can have going forwards. And equally, I want to tell you about our podcast. Beverly, my co-host, and I, we have a podcast that we've done weekly for the last 3 years called Breaking the Cycle, 2 Step Forwards, where we look at all different aspects of child sexual abuse, exploitation, being in care, navigating our health and well-being, navigating our journeys as being parents, the ups and the downs, our relationships, our careers, etc., etc. So we take deep dives into all of these areas, and we also share our recovery journey and what came up for us in therapy, and we share everything, because that is the only way. When we shine a light into dark corners or difficult conversations, that we can start changing the narrative and challenging people's perceptions around all of this. So also in the drama, there was a bit of the restorative justice process. And this is where victims can be in the same room as their perpetrator and have a conversation. So that would be really interesting for me to hear from you, whether you think that's a good process or not. Now, it's not down to me to say whether it is. It's down to the victim, whether they feel that that is a good thing for them. Because sometimes when you can't get your justice through a court of law, just hearing the perpetrator say, yes, I did this to you, yes, I did wrong, can help some individuals recover in their own lives. So I'm not here to say anything's right or wrong. I'm just here to say, did you know this is an option for you? Did you know you could do this? Did you know this is right, this is wrong? So I'm just trying to challenge the status quo and raise awareness. So I think I've made all of my points that I wanted to about the drama at this stage. Where families, some may understand that the abuse has happened, and some may be in complete denial that abuse has happened within the family. All I can say to you is, I know that when I spoke my truth, that my healing started. And I also know that not being able to speak your truth, when you suppress it, it makes you unwell, mentally and physically, in the long run. And there is a lot of science behind the suppression of trauma because of abuse. If you look at adverse childhood experiences, you look at the study that was done, it shows you the impact on long-term health and well-being, and even it shortens your life expectancy by 10 to 20 years, okay? If you don't vocalize what's happened for you, and if you don't get the right help and support. So when we know different, we can do different. We can put things in place for ourselves, for our own health and well-being and our own recovery. There are many people out there that use coping mechanisms that are more harmful to them than helpful, like eating disorders, restricting food or overeating, like alcohol, like drugs, like over-exercising, like overworking. All of those are just ways of suppressing your pain. And I'm here to tell you that you deserve to let go of that pain. You deserve to tell your truth in any which way is the right way for you. And you deserve to find love, life and laughter after abuse. You deserve to live to your full potential. There is help out there for families to get help and support to navigate what's gone on, because when there is a disclosure of abuse within the family, it is like a bomb's gone off, and there is help and support out there to help you navigate that. There are self-help guides out there that will also help you, available on the NHS, because I was part of being a project manager for one of those guides. So there's I can share the links below as well, but the guides are for parents to help them talk to their children if they've gone through any kind of abuse, but especially sexual abuse, age appropriate. There are guides if you're an adult and you are a professional and you feel impacted as an adult and as a professional by what you've gone through. And it's about to get your employer to understand what you've gone through and to help you navigate that journey. I know there's lots of research being done by lots of different institutions for online abuse, for tech-assisted abuse, for abuse within the family home, for institutional abuse, for abuse that's happened in sport, for abuse that's happened in the military, for abuse that's happened within religious settings. So wherever your abuse has occurred, there's going to be an institution, an organisation, a charity or a self-help group out there. Even ritual abuse and satanic abuse. Our friend Dr. Ellie Hansen has just released a report on that. Okay, so whatever you've suffered, whatever the impact, there is help and support out there for you to start your journey one step at a time. Whether it's the right support that you need right now, whether there's a waiting list or not, that's a whole different story. But I'm on here to challenge the conversation, to challenge the status quo, to shine a light into those dark corners and to start having those conversations by sharing my thoughts on this drama called, she says, bear with me, Unforgiveable on BBC Two. Now, we all know, because we've seen it in the media a lot, about the grooming gangs, the rape gangs. It is a thing. We also know that most abuse within UK is perpetrated by white men and women, whatever the stats are. We know that. However, where there is a problem, and there is with grooming gangs, rape gangs, we need to shine a light there. Where there is abuse within an institution, whether it be the church, whether it be a mosque, whether it be whatever setting, yeah, we need to shine a light there. Whether the abuse is online or deep fake, yeah, we need to shine a light there. 100%. Every single puzzle piece needs to be dealt with. It's got its own nuances, its own complexities, and it needs to be dealt with. But we also need to look at the bigger picture. We need to look at the 20 recommendations of the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse. We need to hold the government, cross-party, accountable for implementing those 20 recommendations. And why I keep saying this over and over and over again is because these will drive the foundational change that is needed to better respond to child sexual abuse and exploitation in the UK for generations to come. If we allow all government parties to not do this, to water this down, we will be having another inquiry in 5 years' time, 10 years' time. And I've also just noted just yesterday that in Australia, they had the Royal Commission into child sexual abuse a few years before we had our inquiry into child sexual abuse. They came up with all of these recommendations. So they're a couple of years ahead of us with the implementation of those recommendations. And I've just noticed that there was a report, and I shared it on my LinkedIn this morning, that is calling out the watered down implementation of recommendations and what havoc it is causing. So we need to learn from other countries that are a few years ahead of us. We need to keep looking at what is happening and make sure that we don't do what they've done, because we need that cultural, foundational change in order for the government to meet their 50% reduction in violence against women and girls thing that they said they were going to do. But you know, people come out and said, we want to reduce VULG by 50%. But what does that even look like? What does the total picture look like? What are the puzzle pieces? And how are you going to drive the change in all of those different areas to get an overall reduction in 50%? No one knows what this even looks like. So how can you even put steps in place to reach a goal when you don't know what it looks like? Whereas for the 20 recommendations, and I know there's a lot of kickback, there's a lot of pushback in government over these 20 recommendations. I know it, I see it, I hear it, right? But unless we do the package of measures, for example, mandatory reporting, Child Protection Authority, leadership role, a minister responsible for child sexual abuse and exploitation, redress, specialist support services, and the list goes on and on and on. But in my head, they are the main ones. But it's the package of measures that will allow the fundamental changes that we need to see. And once we've got those fundamentals in place, and bearing in mind, November 22 was when the report was published. So we're now 3 years on, yeah? It's crazy, absolutely crazy. We need a change in the Inquiries Act 2005 to hold all governments to account that when there is an inquiry, when there are recommendations made, you have got to implement them, and we are going to hold you to account. At the moment, we don't have to. The government doesn't have to implement recommendations. Well, what is the bloody point, peeps, of doing an inquiry in the first place if they're not going to be held to account for their implementation of recommendations? What is the point? So, I've given you lots of food for thought today, and I'm more than happy to answer questions below, and I've probably opened up a lot more questioning than answers today, but that's fine because this is ongoing. This has been my life, and it will continue to be my work, my passion, my purpose going forwards. Bev and I are always looking for guests for our podcasts, professionals, activists, campaigners, survivors. But we're also about understanding what you've gone through, the challenges you faced, but also what have you done about your recovery? What has worked for you? What hasn't worked for you? Because we want to always spread hope, always spread the message that you're not alone and that you can empower yourself to move forwards in your life, no matter where you are and how stuck you are. So, gang, thank you for listening to me. And if you've got any questions, please put them below. Please share this live, and please go and watch Unforgiveable if you can. All right, my friends, take care, and please do some self-care if I've made you think a certain way. If anything I've said has triggered you, then please make sure that you put your self-care in place. Go for a walk, scream into the ether if you need to. Do what you need to do to bring you back to a grounded place. So thank you, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Bye for now. Now I've got to learn how to turn this off. The sunshine is in my eyes. There we go. So thank you for joining me, everyone.